Welcome to the Enlightened Life podcast. I'm your host, Scott Allen. What would you do if your psychic abilities turned on out of nowhere, right in the middle of your ex boyfriend's apartment? For most of us, it might sound like a scene from a quirky indie movie, but for today's guest, it was the start of an extraordinary spiritual journey. Since that day in 2021, Andreas Anthony has been helping spiritual seekers connect with their spirit guides and galactic teams through channeled readings, energy healing, and tantric facilitation. His work deepens into clearing energetic blockages and awakening galactic gifts in his clients, blending the esoteric with the grounded. I'm so excited to have him with us today to share his story. So let's get started. Hey, Andreas, how are you? Did I pronounce your name right, by the way?
Yeah,
Andreas. Okay, good. How are you, Andreas? Good to see you.
I'm doing so well. How are you doing,
Good,
Scott?
good. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. This is going to be a fun conversation. I'd love to go back to that night in the apartment in 2021 when your abilities were turned on. What was that like for you? And how did you process all of that at the time?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was scary, to be honest. Now, in hindsight, because we're about three and well, almost 4 years on from that, uh, I can I can go, oh yeah, it was just all really like amazing and spiritually and uplifting, which it was. However, at the time, it was confusing, terrifying, uh, and I had really no idea what was going on, despite having quite what I would like to think a fairly robust spiritual background at the time. So it was very discombobulating, to say the least.
I would imagine. And I can relate from my own experience. I don't know many people who have an awakening like this that's all rainbows and lollipops. It's not. It's frightening at times. And so I can certainly relate to that. What did that feel like? What was that like for you? What was that moment?
There was a sense of knowing, even though I was scared on the human level, you could say, there was a very deep sense of knowing in my being that everything was exactly as it was meant to be. And it felt like, in a weird way, it felt like I knew everything about what it was. And despite I can only say my human self, despite my human self feeling so terrified and confused, because my soul was so ready, it was like it held me through the experience. So even though my consciousness was coming in and out of my body and I was channeling a galactic team that I had no idea about because I'd never met previously. And I was doing all kinds of crazy things with water and earth and fire and light language. And yeah, my ex-boyfriend, my boyfriend at the time was just terrified. He was like, what is going on? He honestly thought I was having some form of psychotic breakdown.
Well, I was going to ask you, what is that like as a bystander?
Yeah, the story is that when I was eating dinner, I think we were having pizza and we were watching RuPaul's Drag Race, and I needed to meditate. I just had this feeling I must meditate now. And he was like, "No, we're literally about to watch RuPaul. Like, how could you?" And I was like, "I'm so sorry. Like, this is really annoying. I know." But I very quickly in that meditation, my head started doing all kinds of crazy things, and I started channeling this very dark, like deep, heavy, booming voice that was like essentially you could think of it as like a broadcast that was like explaining what was going to happen to me, but also to him. And even though my eyes were closed, like I could only say it through my third eye, I could see him like recoiled to the other side of the couch in true horror, like what is about to happen? I'm so scared.
Wow.
But we needed that initiation to be able to contextualize the experience because that's what it did. It was almost like the welcome to the crazy next 3.5 hours.
And it's usually very intense. When it happens, it's intense. They just need to get your attention in a huge way. And you didn't see that coming at all up until that moment.
No, there was nothing to suggest that it was coming.
Wow.
Not at all.
That's amazing. And you've described your life as a series of coming out moments. And I would imagine having to come out in that way as well, this spiritual, we call it coming out of the psychic closet, the spiritual closet, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's huge. A lot of people that I know are still struggling with that because
Yeah.
people think they're crazy.
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of the people that I see as well are struggling to do that, is to essentially come out of the spiritual closet as well. And Yeah, that was me. I mean, I came out as gay when I was 17, and that was hard enough. And then I came out as a spiritual person, so to speak, which sounds weird. Why should you come out as spiritual? But I guess there's that deviation from a classic religion. And, as a deviation, I felt like I had to sort of justify my spiritual beliefs, coming out as a light worker, coming out as a star seed. And yeah, you're risking people seeing your sanity as compromised. And I think that's why it's so terrifying, because no one wants to be seen as though they're delusional. So coming out as psychic was even harder. It was almost like, how much can my parents take? Like, how much can my Aunt Susan take?
Right.
And you just have to do it. And maybe coming out as gay was a was a great way to have the courage to just keep coming out.
But you cannot do this work authentically from a dark closet. You just can't. In order to do the work, you have to be out there. You have to share this with people, or it's nothing. It's just you talking to dead people. There's nothing else beyond this. There's no healing. There's no hope. There's nothing unless you're willing to come out and share it with people. And I don't know what your background is in terms of religion, if that was a big thing in your life growing up. For me, religion wasn't as much a big deal, but my dad was an engineer and he very much left brained and couldn't process any of this. And I think to a certain extent, he still can't. And it's a challenge, not, I mean, he's fine, but he thinks I've lost my mind. And, maybe to a certain extent I have, but not when it comes to this. So I know that this is who I was supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be doing. What was that like for you and your family? How did they manage this?
Yeah, I mean, what stands out to me in your story there is courage, because it requires courage to essentially risk the people that you love seeing you in some sort of way that might make you feel uncomfortable. No one, who wants their parents or their family or their siblings or their friends to think that they are, yeah, absolutely barking mad or somewhere on the spectrum of that. And to me, it's courage that where you accept that that is the risk you're running, and maybe the people around you don't understand. For me, my family aren't super religious, but I am baptized Greek Orthodox. I'm a Greek man, and I went to a Catholic school. So there was quite a large religious imprint on me. uh, but my family is very heavy working class. Like, they are the sort of people that just dig their heels in and work, work, work. And so for me, it was almost like they couldn't understand that as the deviation. Like, what do you mean you're not going to hustle the job? Like, what do you mean you're going to spend your life trying to support others through yoga, tantra? What is this channeling? They just don't even have so it almost just all gets lumped into this like big box with a question mark on it. And that's Andreas's weird stuff that he does.
I so can relate to you on that. It's so funny, but and we all get it different. Like we all are different in the way that this manifests and how we work with it. But at the same time, it's all woo woo. And I have a friend who really helped me when this was happening, and her parents locked her up. They put her
Wow.
in a mental institution because they thought she was schizophrenic because she was hearing dead people, hearing voices, hearing things that weren't there. And after a certain point, they realized, okay, no, she's not. This is just what's going on. But after that, the damage was done. And so it's frightening. I think a lot of people are afraid of that.
Yeah, and I think the good news though is that yes, on some level there are still witches being burned at the stake, you could say. And yet, as we continue to ascend our consciousness as a collective, I feel like the appetite, especially amongst younger people, is growing a lot for this sort of work.
Right.
I don't know if you're on TikTok, Scott, but you only need to go onto TikTok and there are so many people reading tarot and stuff, doing lives and just sharing their gifts. And I always get really inspired by that, because the consciousness is ascending.
Things
We're
are
in the age of Aquarius. People
yeah,
want this stuff and it's starting to change.
I hope so. And I hope it will change for the better. And I hope that the world will become a kinder place. I'm a little bit concerned living in the United States of America at the moment, but I'm still hoping that things will get better and that this awakening will have a positive impact on people. It's funny because you had said, you talked about your life as a series of coming out events. Which one was scarier for
Coming out as psychic was the hardest one.
Wow.
Because when I was coming out of the closet as a gay man, there's like more of a collective experience and story around that. And if anything could be abandoned, it was the part of me that was gay, you know. Whereas I feel like with the psychic work, it's even deeper than that. It's deeper than my sexuality. It's coming really from my soul, and the risk of that is that, again, like we were saying, that you are crazy or you are compromised. And I think maybe if I hadn't have had all of the experience of having to risk everything to come out as a gay person, maybe I wouldn't have made that jump to come out as a psychic. But I knew from that experience that, like, coming out as queer or LGBT, plus, you have that's essentially saying yes to yourself. If you don't do that, then you are saying yes to running a life of inauthenticity, of lying. And I couldn't do that. And I was certainly not going to do that with my psychic work either, because it would be like putting myself in a cage. And we aren't here to put ourselves in cages that other people have created,
They're not our cages.
unless we choose them to be.
Well, we can adopt them, but we
Yeah.
didn't create them. They're other people's cages that they want to lock people up in. No, it's true. It's very true. You know, it's funny. You said that spirituality often bypasses sexuality, but for you, Tantra has bridged that gap. Can you explain what Tantra is to the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the work that I do is in tantric facilitation, pretty specifically for LGBTQ plus men. And Tantra is a pretty nuanced thing. Like, I want to straight off the bat just preface that and say there are different definitions of Tantra, but ultimately, Tantra is a sacred practice that explores devotion to deity, to God, to universe. And through that devotion, there are practices like chanting, like worship. Yes, there is sexual practice in some of the tantric lineages. So Tantra comes from the Vedas, which is the same place that yoga, Ayurveda, these all come from that same Indian subcontinent. So there is a heavy cultural narrative that is on traditional Tantra. And then from there, when Tantra was introduced to the West, you get the rise of what is called Neo Tantra. So, just for the context, Neo Tantra is where we've taken, and so pioneers like Osho are people that have really sort of brought this through. They have taken the elements of Tantra that really dive into the body, they dive into the sensory experience and use that as a vehicle to find more relationship to spirit or to consciousness, to God. So Tantra utilizes one avenue, like sexuality, as a vehicle towards meeting yourself in a fuller place of your spirituality.
Interesting. Interesting. How did exploring Tantra help you heal?
I was really struggling to link the two. So we have been conditioned, it is my perspective that we have been conditioned historically to separate our sexuality and our spirituality, or our sex energy and our spiritual energy. So, I mean, you only need to look at religion and the way that they
Sure.
shame and taboo sex to see that in action. So it's undeniable that our sexual energy is one of the most driving forces within our body, because it is life force energy. It is quite literally the energy that we are born from. Without it, we don't exist. It creates life. So it's necessary, and it's inherently spiritual energy. And I was ashamed, traumatized gay man, probably still had some internalized homophobia going on. And I was this up and coming yoga teacher, and my spiritual career was starting to blossom. Meanwhile, I had all this contracted sex energy and shame, and I didn't know how to make what to make of it. And I was looking for some form of language to bring that together, because yoga didn't do that for me. You know, if there's any yogis in your audience, yoga can often be quite dogmatic in its approach towards sexuality. If you don't get the right sort of teacher, they can be very purity minded, I would say, where they shame sexual energy. So as a gay man, hearing, you know, you can only have sex for procreation purposes from a yoga school, I was like, well, where does that put me? Because this is feeling a lot like year 7 religion class in my Catholic school. And I don't want to go through this again. I've already tried to start moving beyond that. And that's when I was moved towards Tantra. So I still love yoga, and I think there's amazing pieces of yoga. But Tantra starts to actually look at sexuality as a way of finding that spirituality. So it started to bridge it, because in Tantra, you use tools such as meditation, breath work, you use embodiment, so somatic touching your body, breath, movement, sound, touch. These are ways that we
Mhm.
explore the landscape of our body. You actually work with that in an intentional way and in a sacred way to see what wants to come out of that. And so rather than having this like typical sexual goal, which we have, which you would, anyone knows what those goals normally look like, there is no goal. If anything, it's just a curiosity to understand yourself and deepen your sense of connection to yourself, to your body, to the earth, and to spirit by tapping in to that very, very potent life force energy that is within you.
Wow. So how does your work in Tantra specifically address the unique challenges that LGBTQ plus individuals face around sexuality and self-empowerment?
Yeah, so I also, before I answer this, I do want to say that my experience is predominantly working with gay men or bisexual men. And so I don't want to speak for like the entire rainbow family, because I know our experiences are so diverse. However, what I've from my own experience and what I've noticed is that there internalized homophobia and internalized shame around that is a huge thing. And just like accepting queerness without the shame is a huge piece, because often there's layers of that. So we'll have accepted that I am a gay man and I'm a proud gay man, but then there's still layers of shame around the actual act of having intimacy with another man. There's still shame around that. Or one thing that Tantra, I think, really solves for gay men and bi men is that it actually provides an avenue for us to explore love. Because historically, gay men, I'm saying gay men, and I know, but I'm talking about all men who love men.
Right. Right.
Historically, gay men have had to hide their love. They've had to shadow their expression of love. We have been forced to push it all into the shadows, into the nightclubs, into the saunas, behind the toilet blocks.
Right.
And that creates shame. That creates a sense of what I am doing is wrong. And thankfully, in countries like Australia and hopefully the US, I mean, I don't want to speak for the US, but from what I know from over here in Australia, it's fairly great around gay rights, depending on which state you're in.
Depends on where you go. Right.
Yeah, exactly. But if we compare that to 40 years ago or 30 years ago, even, it's a lot better. And even so, there is still the perpetuation of shame within the community. And I truly believe that it is also self perpetuated, that it is not just an external force that is put upon us, but it is also reinforced. Because when it comes to gay men, I often say gay men are great at sex and really bad at love,
Hmm.
because the love has been so um, invalidated for so long that we had to go into these secret places where it was quick and nasty and get the job done, and people are still in that. Grinder is a great example of that, where people are still, so Grinder, gay hookup app, if you don't know, is a great example of that, where we're still like, oh, just get the job done and feel empty afterwards. So many gay men are craving love, they're craving intimacy, they're craving connection, they're craving just loving, holding touch with another man, where it doesn't have to be this like scandalous affair. And it actually is about connection as the forefront. And that's where Tantra is the most beautiful soul for that, because I get to come in. I'm for example, I'm hosting a workshop in January with exactly like this. I get to come in and create that safe space for them to explore that, to be guided in that, to have a language around it, and to take the pressure off, you know, to take the pressure off going, oh, sorry, I actually want something a little bit more than this quick hookup. Is that okay? And yeah, it is okay, because that's the intentional sacred space that we're creating. So it starts from there. And then, of course, it blossoms into, oh my gosh, I feel something deeper to spirit now. There's something more that I'm connecting to. But it starts from that place.
That's fascinating. I grew up in the '80s, and back then nothing was even remotely accepted. And the thing is you were always told, well, you can't get married because you're not capable of having a loving relationship because you are, by definition, promiscuous. And it would drive everybody, as you say, like underground into these bars that had no windows and no signs and everything was, I mean, it was just, that was the type of thing. And yet when you tell them, but no, we want to be committed and we want to be married and we want to have long, loving relationships, the answer is no, we don't want you to, because it's it's this circular thing that goes around and around and around. And you're right, that's what drives people into the underground and these dirty, seedy places. And I know nothing, and I told you this, the other day, I know nothing at all about this Tantra at all. It is not part of my existence. I just don't know. But I think if it helps people feel better about themselves and have a healthier look, I'm all for that. I think people need to start feeling better about themselves and who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing a little bit more of your experience, because I was born in the 90s. So I have some of that, but I don't have that full experience of being so ashamed, or pushed into that rather, sorry. Or even the experience of like, I could get arrested here. Like these are the real experiences of living LGBTQ plus humans out there. And you know what? A lot of queer people, rainbow people are super spiritual, and it manifests as witchy or tarot or whatever. Like it doesn't always have to manifest in the same way. It's probably like unlikely to be religious, but sometimes, but yet the spirituality is still there. Druidism, like all of these things that paganism, there's a lot around that. And I think that there's actually like something to say around the humans out there that span gender, they and span sexuality spectrum. Like they have often been oracles in the past. If you look at Greek, like in the Delphi, and or the two-eyed men, like there's so many lineages where queer people were essentially like in these spiritual places of almost like a sage energy. And I think that that's still somewhere in the lineage. I think that's still something that really enlivens the heart of, of queer people. So I try and do my best to help bring and anchor sexuality into this experience of awakening consciousness, which I call the ascension. And I'm a firm believer that there are too many spiritual leaders out there who have turned their back on sexuality, don't want to go there, don't risk my reputation, it's too taboo. But how can we do that when it is such a huge and fundamental aspect of who we are? It must come with us in the ascension process. And yes, sexuality refines and it becomes less primal and it becomes more uplifted as we raise our vibration. That is very true. However, we need to know how to do that. We need to know how to work with that dense energy that sexuality can often carry, and to ascend that with us.
Good point. And that kind of brings me to my next question, because you have said that we are in the middle of a profound consciousness shift known as ascension. What do you think that means for humanity, and how can people navigate through this? What's your thought on that?
I'm a firm believer, and I'm going to say Noah, because this all comes from my psychic work predominantly, that we are truly in an ascension period. There's all different takes on that, but I'm one of those like almost OG diehards. It's like, yeah, no, we're in an ascension and it's going to skyrocket us into like another phase of existence. Can you just clarify your question again? Because I don't want to, because I could go really off topic and go into all the different ways.
Feel free to kind of answer it any way you want, but I really feel like, since we are in the midst of this ascension, what do you think it means for us as a humanity?
Oh gosh. It means that we are breaking the veil of living in a false matrix reality, a false reality, and believing that that is the truth, and believing that we are just these little people, and believing that we are just our bodies. It means that we are going from that place of being a slave to the game, as I would call it, the matrix game, where we live these lives that most people despise and just work and hustle the machine. We are breaking out of that. We are waking up to the true reality of who we are as a soul being, as an incarnated soul being into a human body. And what this ascension awakening does is it little by little ups our consciousness awareness so we can take more and more information. What do you mean? And now everyone's talking about manifesting. Only 20 years ago, 15, it was the secret. Don't talk about it. Only certain people with $5,000 who can pay for the secret can access this information. Now everyone's talking about manifesting to the point where it's almost boring because manifesting has anchored itself into our consciousness. What does that mean? It means that we recognize that we are powerful creative beings, that we create, that we aren't just the slaves to the machine. And that's just one tiny little example of how this is raising. We get to the point where we go, hang on a sec, I am a soul being and I am way more than I ever thought I was. And in that way, you kind of, I see this ascension as our consciousness ascends as human beings. We mentally, consciously break out of this mentality of like, I am the victim of my reality. We reclaim our sovereignty and our ability to create through the reality that we're experiencing here. And then as we do that, that world around us shifts. It looks better. It feels better because we've created it from a place that feels better, from a place that is empowered. So as in essence, we're going from a place that is pretty low vibe and doesn't feel that great a lot of the time into a place that is a lot more sovereign, a lot more empowered, and a lot more like responsibility of how powerful we are as creative beings, as soul beings.
And in case people haven't already figured it out, you are from Australia.
Yeah.
What accent, he says. I have no accent. But I feel like, depending on where they're listening from, they will know you're not from the United States. But I do question, what is it like where you are? What is the vibe in Australia? I feel like here in the United States, and I'll share this with you a little bit, there
Yeah.
are a lot of people on this journey, but there's a lot of people not on this journey. I feel like the United States, we have problems. So, as does any other place has problems. We're not. It's not unique to us. But I have recently lamented the fact that we will not, at least in my lifetime, be the kinder, more accepting, gentle nation that I had hoped we would become before I died, and that this would go on, for my child to live in a place that is just kinder and gentler. And there are countries that are like that. We could live in Finland, we could live in Switzerland. There are places that are just more open to that. What's it like where you are from?
Yeah, there's a lot there. There's so much there. The US is a US. I did a channeling about this like 2 weeks ago. The US is one of the catalysts for the rampant up in the ascension. It is. And my perspective on this is that it's because the US has held so much density, and it's been a center of control of the false matrix. So, when I say false matrix, I just mean like the low vibe, like BS that has been our life. So the US has a lot of unground, like right now, you're scooping out all of the stinking piles of poop and you're airing out your dirty laundry. That's what's happening in the US, in my perspective. It has to be aired out. But in Australia, we're an example of a country that's a little bit behind the times. So it's all here. We have absolutely the same mechanisms that you guys have, but it's all still it's all covert, she'll be right, mate. It's all just a little bit less out in the open. Thankfully, Australia is a fairly happy-go-lucky nation. We're a very diverse nation, so there's a lot of experiences in this country. But I would say that Australia is very much similar to the US. However, we just don't have quite as much intensity. Our sine wave is a little bit less, but I think it's a similar thing because a lot of this energetic stuff is global.
Right. And I believe that. And in fact, I had an interview with someone recently for another episode of our show, which will be, I think, broadcast after yours. He said he felt that what the United States is going through is instrumental in this shift towards more peace. And it's an interesting perspective. He's from the United States, so he's here and he gets it. But he felt that it was going to be an integral part of what helps with this ascension, so to speak.
Yes, it is. I would agree because I understand that as an Australian person not on the ground in the US, I don't have the lived experience of actually being in that country right now. So from the outside, I get to see from the outside as an observer, which maybe that makes me more impartial in a way. But the thing that I see the most taking place in the US is that the leader that you have chosen collectively to elect is actually creating the mechanism for people to choose their sovereignty. because those that are pro-Trump are feeling very liberated right now. They're feeling very supported right now. They're feeling very excited. And that's actually the most Americans. That's most Americans, according to your result.
Right.
And there's also a large chunk of Americans that are feeling afraid, scared, victimized, perhaps. And so for that cohort of American people, they are now being forced to look inside. They are now being forced to start to cultivate their own empowerment, to start to come together in community, to start to be a stand for what they ask for what they want, for what they need, but also to start facing some of their big fears as well. Because it's very easy, and this is, people probably won't want to hear me say this. It's very easy to just kind of give your power away. Oh, Trump got elected. My power's gone. The next 4 years are done. I got asked to write an article on how to persevere for the next 4 years. And I said, sorry, I'm not doing that. I write for a couple of magazines here in Australia, queer magazines. And I said, I'm not doing that because I don't want anybody to create and sow the reality that their next 4 years are going to be about perseverance. They're not, unless you so choose it to be, because you are the creator of your reality. And so how you respond, how you react, how you relate, how you create, they're all up to you. And that mindset that you have in response to what has gone on. And so this election, or anyone listening that thinks that, you know what, Trump got elected, this election has just ruined the ascension. Now we've just gone back 5 million steps. I think there's some really deep shadow there to start looking at and going, well, what wants to come out of this? Where do I need to find my inner empowerment? Where do I need to question my beliefs? And why have I handed my sovereignty away to a man with orange hair? Like,
well, and look, you talk about living in someone else's cages. I mean, that's where this is, right? You can live in these cages that they want you to live in, but you don't have to.
but who is asking anyone to live in that cage?
Well, I think there are some people that would love people to live in that cage. There's a certain group of people who want to control how people live and how, whether they can control their bodies, whether they can live freely and openly. And if you're an immigrant, you're marginalized. And look, not to turn this into a political thing, because it's not a political show, but I do feel as though, if you can choose to subscribe to that and live in a state of fear for 4 years, or you can just live and say, no, I'm not doing that. And I just had this discussion with someone who was thinking of living in a red state before the election. And a red state meaning, a Republican-led state.
Right.
And right now they're in a very blue, left-leaning state, but they wanted to be someplace warm. And they had discussed going there, and now they're terrified to go. And I said, look, well, first of all, you can always move back. I mean, that's the first thing. But why would you want to let them tell you where you should live? Because that's what they want you to do. They want to keep you out. So go down there and be you and live in that space and vote for the people you want to vote for and live and be a happy person, because it's not up to them. It's a free country. We can still move around from state to state. And, I mean, that it comes around to that. Now, again, not to go down that road too much, but I am going to shift gears slightly here. I did want to talk to you a little bit about psychic abilities, because you had mentioned that everyone has the ability to be psychic. What's your feeling on that? And do you think, well, what advice would you give to people who might feel that they have something going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you for sharing what you shared, because what that example you gave is exactly what I was trying to express around you get to create your own sovereign decisions around this. So thank you for that, because it really exemplified what I was trying my hardest to get out there.
I understand, and it is frightening for a lot of people. And I am not trying to belittle that or limit that. I
Or
totally
minimize.
understand it, completely understand it. But I'm the type of person that is not going to let someone tell me where I can live, and I'm not going to live in fear. I'm going to
Yeah.
live. Now, it's easy to say. I mean, I'm not a woman who needs an abortion. I'm not an immigrant, so, I can kind of walk down the street and blend into the shadows and just kind of do my thing. But there are a lot of people that are terrified right now. We all have to deal with it in our own way, and I understand that.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of energetic movement, and it's only going to continue to move forward. The psychic stuff is awakening for many, many, many people, and slowly but surely more of us will awaken to our psychic gifts, I use the word gifts with a bit of a cringe because I don't necessarily see it as a gift. I just see it as standard.
Mhm.
Um, and I know that it's very fortunate for someone like myself who's a practicing psychic, be like, anyone can be a psychic. But I truly believe that because my psychic work tells me that that is the case, that we all have access to our psychic ability, that it is not supernatural. It is just one of the abilities that we just turned off at some point, and now we believe that we don't have it, and we don't train it, we don't learn about it. As kids, we pretty much get, if there's anything there, it gets switched off pretty quickly. So I really do believe that, I'm predominantly a psychic channel, so not so much a psychic medium. I don't really I don't talk to dead people that much. I do, but it's not what I choose to do. I choose to predominantly channel the galactics, an Atlantean soul, like whatever. The angels, they're the three that I mainly channel. But I also know that we are going to, and I don't know when, but we are going to reach a point in our development as humans where that's not remarkable at all. And actually, at some point, it's not even a thing. Like, oh, you're a channel, whoopee doodah. Like, that's where we're actually heading because it isn't remarkable. It just feels like it's remarkable now. And I say that to try and normalize it, because we think that psychic ability, and I am so guilty of this before it actually like awoken within me, but it wasn't just like, oh, I had a little experience and now all of a sudden I'm super confident being a psychic. Heck no, I went for over a year of like the most heavy gaslighting ever. It's real. And, I was going to channel one of my people that I channel, the Atlantean soul that I channel. She's like the one that's coming in now that wants to like guide me in what I'm saying. But, she was really adamant at saying that the biggest barrier to people entering or starting to open their psychic awareness is self-doubt, is self-gaslighting. It is. That's from my perspective because it shuts it off.
Go on. Say
Yeah,
continue
it
because
shuts
I,
it off.
just agreeing with you because it's so 100% true. If I sit there and I got a reading with someone and I think, oh man, I hope they show up today. Guess what? They don't show up today. but but if I go in feeling, hey guys, I know you're going to be there. Can you go get some people for so and so and yeah, I'll see you in an hour. Guess what? It's the best reading ever. But you have to trust that they're going to show up.
Yeah, that's so true. And I also think though that even going even deeper than that, like, and this is a bit of a pivot, but just going off what you said here, for me, like if my team don't show up, I'm just I'm going anyway because I mean I've never had it that my team don't show up, but I back because it's not outside of me. It is not something that is over there. I am the one doing the thing. And what we are tapping into psychically, from my perspective, is more of ourselves. So when I'm channeling the Galactic Council of blah blah blah, it's like what I'm connecting into is actually a deeper and bigger aspect of the fullness of our soul. So it's always us, it's always you. And you could think, oh well, I'm connecting to Aunt Susan and she died 20 years ago, so there's me and then there's Aunt Susan. But actually, in the full realness of the spiritual truth, you and Aunt Susan are the same. And you're connecting from that place of both being soul beings and connecting from that space. So you're just psychically tuning into that connection. That's how I see it. And that helps me because I don't feel like I'm pulling something out of nowhere. I feel like I'm tuning in. I'm not tethering something towards me to try and talk to it.
Sure.
I'm tuning in. So in that way, it makes it less scary because a lot of people I know, the other big block is fear of, oh my God, I'm going to attract a demon and then I'm going to get possessed or it's going to haunt me forever or, or something like that. That's really real because that fear of the unknown, that fear of the dark is a huge primal fear within us. And that knowingness that I'm going within, that I'm connecting into more of my love and expanding that out so that I can connect psychically, that also helps to negate the idea that, oh my God, this unknown entity is going to just attach to me or something like that. Because there's that us and them mentality, that separation mindset is what creates the fear.
Right. And religion teaches us that. We were talking about religion earlier, but they teach us about the demons, which creates the fear. So there's a lot of that out there.
Of course, because why would they want anyone, here's me going into my rant now, but why would they want anyone to be psychically empowered?
Well, they don't. And it took me, you said it was a year of going into a deep dive. For me, it was more like 2 or 3 because, well, I didn't even believe it. It wasn't what I thought it was supposed to look like. So I just didn't think, oh, I didn't think, oh, I must be a medium. This is great. No, I didn't at all. I thought, like, what the heck is this? I thought I was haunted. I thought I had a haunted house. I thought I was maybe I'm maybe it's mental illness. Maybe I'm possessed. I don't know what it is. But I wasn't thinking, oh, this is great. I'm going to start doing stage shows. This is awesome. It wasn't like that. It just was not like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I relate so hard to that. Like, yep, I
Mm.
thought I was possessed for a while. I thought I was mentally ill. I actually went to doctors for a year to have my brain scanned in case I was having a stroke. Like, I went through all of that stuff too. And yeah, I think you kind of have to so that you can buy it. You have to believe it to buy into it. You kind of have to cross off all of the doubts.
True. And that took years. That was not like an overnight thing. That took a long time for me.
Yeah.
So
I'd
here
say
I
for me it was about 18 months. So maybe I got off easy.
I don't know. Well, I mean, it wasn't like a decade, but it was a while, and I was practicing with people, because people said, "Well, just try it. Just try it. See what happens if you sit down with someone." And I would, but I was doing it to humor them, and the next thing you know, they're understanding what I'm saying, and then they're telling their friends, and their friends are coming, and then they're telling other people, and I thought, "Well, wait a minute. I have a full-time job here. I can't be doing this all the time."
Yeah.
And now I do, which is really great. I love that I can do this full time and share the messages and share the gift. So, it's interesting. What do when you talk about the galactic themes, who are they? What are they to you?
Yeah, for me, my galactic team is it's you can think of it as it's it's not aliens in a ship. So
Hmm.
there are like, the Galactic Federation of Worlds, maybe you could say the Galactic Council of Light. These are like these kind of tokenistic names that we use for the big guys that are maybe in a ship, who knows? But the my team is like I guess you could say like a personal council, and they're not incarnated into a physical body at all. They're actually a an aspect of my soul, but it's like think about it as way higher up there, way closer to or less separated from source. So I don't know how to describe it as more ascended, ninth dimensional beings. So they're not incarnated into any physical form. They're actually just a consciousness. And I am part of that consciousness. But
Hmm.
there's also a part of that consciousness that has incarnated and funneled itself down into this person that you see as Andreas. So, what I'm doing in that is I'm zooming or connecting in my consciousness to that group consciousness that I'm already in anyway. And I'm just expanding my consciousness to access that part. I don't know if that answers it because it's hard to describe.
Yeah. Well, and all of this stuff is hard to describe.
Yes.
The whole thing is difficult to describe. I was with a group the other night and did a private event at a family's home, and well, how do you get your messages? And well, a number of different ways, and one of them are emotions. Sometimes I feel emotions. How can you describe an emotion? I
Mm,
feel proud, I feel happy, I feel sad, but it's hard for me to explain into words what that means if I'm trying to bring someone through. What does that mean? How do you describe that? Describe red.
yeah.
Describe the color red. Well, I don't know. Without saying, it's like a rose, it's like a fire, or whatever. What's red? It's
Yeah.
it it's just that kind of thing. So I get it. Very difficult. We're running near the end of the show. I can't believe we've already been together over 50 minutes, but I do have one last question for you. You are absolutely passionate about inspiring people to follow their authentic vision, no matter how unconventional it is. So, what's the biggest lesson you've learned about staying true to yourself, even when it feels risky?
It's harder to to be inauthentic, and it's more risky to be inauthentic in the end. Because what are you risking? You are risking your happiness. You are risking your whole future because you will make decisions from that place of contraction, and you'll create a life which doesn't feel right, that
Yeah.
feels wrong. So, to me, if we're weighing up risks, it is far more risky to stay silent, to shut it down, to not be authentic, and that's what helped me to just be courageous. And I think, you have to accept that there's courage involved. There is courage involved. It's a bit scary, but you are strong enough. You can. And you're also spiritually guided too. All your team, everyone's teams, everyone's higher self, just like, come on, baby. Come on, baby. We got you. We got you. We got you.
I think it's great. And on that note, that's just a great way to end the show. I wanted to ask you, you had mentioned you have a free gift that people can get. Would you like to share anything about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually really connected to what we were just talking about.
Mhm.
I have two free gifts. So one is an authenticity guide. It's like the 5 ways that I have really pushed into my authentic self to create my life, to create my career, to create my relationships, all the things that feel good and correct. And the other one is for anyone that is really terrified of accessing their psychic work, and is a little bit afraid of like maybe accessing something scary. I have a psychic protection guide as well, which just covers like it's a 7-page guide, covers all the fundamentals around ways that you can choose to protect yourself psychically. I find that useful because then, if I've got a little crystal in my hand, it makes me feel better or whatever it is. Or if I'm spinning my Merkaba, it makes me feel like I can do the thing. So if you are feeling a little bit blocked in that way and you want to start to get over that fear, then that's a really good free guide to use as well.
How can they get that?
They can just head over to my website, which is andreasembodiment.com, or I'm on social media everywhere. If they just type in Andreas Embodiment, I'll come up.
Andreas, thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey with me today, from the sheep-filled landscapes of rural Australia to becoming a guide for spiritual seekers navigating ascension, tantra, and psychic awakening. Your story of resilience, self-discovery, and courage to keep coming out authentically is really inspiring, even to me. To our listeners, I hope this conversation has encouraged you to explore your own psychic and spiritual potential and to embrace the whispers of your soul, no matter how unconventional they may seem. As Andreas reminded us, the deeper we grow our roots, the higher we can grow our branches. If you'd like to connect with Andreas, book a session, or explore more about his incredible work, visit andreasembodiment.com. And if Tantra has piqued your interest, don't miss out on the House of Tantra, his LGBTQ plus men's tantric community. I'm your host, Scott Allen. Remember to trust the whispers of your soul, embrace the light within, and keep walking the path to your most enlightened life. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leaving us a rating and share a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep shining. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.